Welcome to Stop Paying Capital Gains Now, where guests will share their experiences in saving money easily with this spendthrift trust. The real name for the trust is Irrevocable, Complex, Discretionary, Non-Grantor Spendthrift Trust. Capital gains are currently 23.8% on any profits, be it a crypto investor, crypto miner, real estate investor, day trader, forex, stock market trader. Your guest is Sally Gimon, and I want to make sure that you can learn how to save money easily. Hello, this is Sally Gimon. I am the owner of thetrustisyou.com, and this is my new podcast called Stop Paying Capital Gains Now. Unfortunately, in the United States, capital gain is almost on anything and everything you do, especially on investments. Currently, it's 23.8%, with past legislation to raise it 40% for some tax brackets, $400,000 and more per year. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday I'll get there. I am pleased to say I have with me guest John Utley. He is somebody I met through TikTok. He is an engineer at IBM. He does crypto investing and would love to tell you his story on this. Thank you, John, for meeting us here.
Oh, you bet. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me your why. Why crypto investing?
Yeah, Sally, if it's okay, I may spend like 2 minutes on
Go
this,
ahead.
but I think
This is your time.
this is kind of my why statement. So I'm going to rewind time back to 2014 when I was at IBM. And I led one of the sectors there, and the team that I was a part of was the very first blockchain team. And at the time, IBM was the largest blockchain company in the world. And you're asking me, well, why is this relevant? Well, that's the technology under cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
And by the way, when I was digging into blockchain, cryptos, I knew of them, didn't own any of them at the time. I did not get into blockchain because of the cryptos. I got involved. I was asking myself the question, how can I stay relevant at my age in corporate America without the age discrimination thing kicking in? So I was fortunate in my role. I had free access to some of the best intel available, because in today's times, good data is hard to find. Unbiased data is hard to find. So if I wanted a report from Gartner, Forrester, and these reports cost money. So an average report that I could get, say $4,000, $5,000. So I had unlimited access every month in terms of how much I guess I could spend in terms of reports. So I guess net is after reviewing all of the disruptive tech, I decided to double down on blockchain. And I would say probably the personal reasons why is that I remember the use case was about this woman. She would grow her own rice. She was in Vietnam, and she would sell it. But by the time she actually sold it, there was about 6 or 7 middlemen. And at the end of the day, she's the one who made the least. And everybody else was, I guess, rewarded for her hard work. So the thing that caught me the most is that if you eliminate these middlemen because of blockchain, she can go right to the consumer. And so I was fascinated by that. So that's kind of how I got started. But if it's okay, maybe I'll spend another maybe a minute and kind of now talk about how, cryptos are related.
Please do. You have
Okay.
more. Most people have only gotten crypto within the last 2 years. I mean, from 2014, you were at the starting of crypto. So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. One thing I forgot to mention too is my role at IBM I was the delegation holder. What the heck is a delegation holder? So I was the deal maker, which was the title internally. So my job is to work with IBM legal team and work on our largest deals that we had for any current quarter.
Wow.
And I probably shouldn't name names, but just imagine this. I sat in the boardroom I did probably 60 to 65 contracts, blockchain contracts. Again, this is in 2015.
Exactly.
Right. And these are companies that are in the Fortune 100s. And I'll say this, there was three companies in the Fortune 10s that were over $1 billion.
Wow.
So I was the negotiator for the business terms, which represented about 80% of our contracts. And I had our attorneys. So I was client facing. And the only reason why I mention this is because quietly, all of these enterprises were getting blockchained up. That's what I call it. Gosh, almost 8 years ago, right?
That's
And
amazing.
yeah,
I mean, you are the expert. I mean, 8 years ago, average Americans only know about blockchain within, well, crypto's made the news because of what's happened with, last week with one of
yeah,
the wallets blowing up. But so many
yeah,
people don't even have 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience. You've been in it for 8 years. That's amazing.
yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna come full circle. Okay,
Okay.
so probably some personal info. So I'm a single dad as of 2010, and when I say single dad, I had two of the kids are older now, out of the house, but I had three kids full time. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to date. I'm going to stay home. And then I'm like, what am I going to do? So because I was so entrenched in blockchain, I asked myself two questions. Do I want to be a content creator, like a YouTube guy? Or do I want to learn how to trade cryptocurrencies? Because back in 2015, I had a feeling that it reminded me of the dot-com era, but 10x larger. So, and I also had a feeling that based off what I knew, that every single enterprise company would eventually have their own cryptocurrency
Okay.
based off the utility, right? So I decided then, you know what? There's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with the tech, but I want to make money at the same time. So I passed on the YouTube idea and dug into learning how to trade. And by the way, just from a validation standpoint, um, I'm kind of ADD-ing you, but 10 seconds on this, Sally, is because I've learned so much about this, just blockchain. Um, I've spoken to MIT, their student body and alumni, several times.
Excellent.
Um, and then I've also co-authored um, blockchain courses, masterclass blockchain courses for the University of Washington, which is I live in Seattle,
Mhm.
as well as Portland State. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you, so I'm not just, some kind
You're
of
an
guy.
expert. Just take it. You're a complete expert. So thank you for
Okay.
sharing with us.
Okay, so now as I was digging into cryptos and being single, I say this embarrassingly, but since 2016, when I officially made that decision, I have spent over 12,000 hours digging in on how to make money in trading with cryptos. Thus, I have carpal tunnel right now, right? Right?
But you're making enough money not to worry about that. So that's good.
Yeah. So now, if you fast forward to 2021, I was approached by a friend of mine. He works at Ernst& Young, for those that are familiar with EY,
Mhm.
and he's a principal there. He manages around $18 billion over there. Smart guy, super smart. But he asked me to be a startup or a part of a startup um, in the crypto world to be a hedge fund for Bitcoin and Ethereum futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And I said yes. So, and we also had two lead traders that came from the traditional equities markets. Each of them collectively about 80 years experience trading the S&P 500 and gold. And now they're in the blockchain space and cryptos. So they had their strengths and weaknesses and vice versa, right? So what's interesting about this, and the reason why I'm telling you this, is that our lead trader, he his whole setup that he was proposing for the hedge fund was something that his father-in-law taught him in the 70s. This is before everything, basically,
Mhm.
in terms of the internet and high frequency trading, et cetera, et cetera. So I was a little skeptical, but at the same time, I was kind of mesmerized because of his career. I've always looked up to traders. But when I realized that the win rate was only like 50 to 55%, I was like, boy, there's got to be a better way. So because I've been sitting in front of my computer for 12,000 hours, um, I put together my own setup. And a setup is basically on how to buy and sell. And we we decided to move forward with my setup actually. And it's that setup that is approved by the Security and Exchange Commission.
Wow.
So
Okay.
just from a validation standpoint, so all of that happened, and here I am kind of competing per se against two people with 80 years experience, right? So now I actually, since you and I met a couple months ago, Sally, I
Hmm.
decided to resign and step aside from that hedge fund because of my own, this business I want to start called Easy Charts. And yes, I want to make money, but I want to make just enough money to travel the country in my van when my youngest son graduates from high school, June of 2023. And I'm almost done. But I want to travel the country and literally there's two things I want to do. One is I want to be able to fund my business by selling my setup to hedge funds and family offices. Um, because they're still scratching their head on terms of how can they um, uh, be successful in such high volatility. How
Hmm.
about that? Now, the second thing I want to do is just teach this for free. As you and I were chatting a few months ago, I just, my parents just moved from Washington down to Texas, so a big Hispanic community where they live. And I love that culture. Love, love, love. So, and my dad speaks fluent Spanish. I don't. So I think he and I could be a good combo. But I just want to, for those that'll take it, because I'm going to sell this thing, the whole setup, gosh, for probably $10,000 US dollars plus some consulting fees. So it's pretty fairly expensive, I guess. But I want to, again, just literally give that exact same setup with some education, though. That's key.
Exactly.
To,
Well,
right?
I think so many people don't know what they're doing. They're watching YouTube videos or watching TikTok videos and are not sure. And quite frankly, $10,000 is not bad because if I'm not trying to put a number on you, but what kind of return do you think someone would get using your setup within a
Exactly.
year?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and by the way, I did forget something, and this is so relevant, Sally, is the reason why I reached out to you is, and I forgot to mention this, back in 2014 and 2015, when it comes to blockchain, I knew there was a lot of goodness, but I also knew there was a bad side, a downside. And it's unfortunately, the downside has arrived to our new world 2.0. And the downside is that I worried about 8 years ago was and still is, how do I protect my assets?
Yes.
Right? So as an example, and by the way, I always wondered 8 years ago, how can somebody come in that's overreaching and, I can't think of the best word, but just kind of start taking things from us or me. And I'll give you a classic example. This recently happened for those that remember in Canada. It was in this year in 2022. I think it was a few months ago. But the truckers up in Canada,
Yes.
there was a massive protest. I can't remember where, but a
Toronto.
massive pro
A friend of mine
okay,
lived there, so yes.
okay. So Prime Minister Trudeau, and again, this is not meant to be political, but from my understanding is that those truckers had their money siphoned from their bank accounts, their
Correct.
personal bank accounts, as an example. And I can't imagine what is happening now to them. And what worries me the most about that is no other world leaders that I have heard of are standing up and taking a stance against that,
Correct.
right? So that right there, Sally, is that's what probably spooked me the most, meaning the time has arrived. I've lost sleep over this. I've wondered how this could happen. I never thought it would be the government. Again, not to be political, this overreaching thing. So that probably put the exclamation point on why I reached out to you and why I think a trust is so beneficial, for me, my business, my family, right? And again, it's not to be a tax preservation. I love that. Absolutely love that concept. How to bring it's not illegal to bring our taxes down to single digits,
Correct?
right? Right. But for me, I want to be able to, I don't know, not preserve, but protect um, myself and my family from what happened in Canada. So that was a long answer as to my why,
But it
right?
makes sense. You're looking out for your children. You're looking out for yourself. You know, I didn't realize the truckers were having their personal bank accounts affected. But when a U.S. senator goes after a certain person in New York, saying that they want to go after him for he bought artwork that has gone up in price. I mean, the
Yeah.
I'm not anti-American. I love this country, but
Yeah.
I can do so much better with my own, saving my money and my real estate. I mean, so far I've saved over $40,000 in capital gains just because I have the trust. So I 100% agree with you on that, John. So tell us a little bit more about what this $10,000 course that you're planning on doing. What do you think the return if someone starts, let's say January 2nd when the market's open? What in a year? How much do you think they could percentage wise? Are we talking 2% back? Are we talking 20% back?
Mm.
I don't mean to
Y-
put you on the spot, but what's a good idea for you?
No, and no, it's a wonderful question because it's a great segue into another thought. It depends on how much, there's a lot of variables that go on, but um, depending on how much money they have and what their risk tolerance is, all those kinds of things,
Correct.
I can tell you this. I can tell you this. This world is not going to get any cheaper. So when
Yes.
I look at the charts, I remember talking to my parents 3 years ago when I was sharing with them that commodities are going to go through the roof, like
Yes.
sugar, coffee, lumber, you name it. So we are officially in a commodity super cycle. And if anybody's familiar with those could last for decades. And that means that things are going to get expensive from a commodity standpoint. And guess what? The commodity super cycle just started,
Yes.
right? So for me, how much can they make? At least they can outpace inflation, right? And and if you look at the traditional equities, that's not outpacing inflation,
Exactly.
right? So that's my number one thing. And then kind of back to the trust is I'm so hopeful that these people that I can teach for free, not the hedge funds, but these people, these families, it's my this to me would be a dream come true that I could refer them to you
I
because
appreciate that.
but I truly believe that once somebody goes down the blockchain rabbit hole, you're going to learn a lot in terms of what's really going on in this world,
Yes.
right? But I also think that because of that education and the potential of the money that they can make or the potential of the money they can save, that's why I'm so grateful I met you because I know for a fact that these people that I'm going to work with, they're going to be well off, right?
Exactly. I since we've met, I've just launched a new program, Learn with Sally Marie, to help people. A statistic from bankrate.com says 80% of Americans have $90,000 in debt. It could be their mortgage, car payments, credit cards, things like this, and not saving 10% for retirement. And it's my plan to become financially free. And, you know, when you start making some serious money, you do want to start looking at how you can start saving money, but don't talk about serious money, talk about everyday money because
Yeah.
like you said, inflation. It's I tell this story. I went to go make a birthday cake for my nephew, and I went to go buy a dozen of eggs in the grocery store, and I'm like, 2.49 for a dozen of eggs. I mean, in Phoenix, I
Yeah.
was, yes, I wait for the sales for 99 cents for a dozen of eggs. I'm like, that's an everyday thing that people use. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
you're not going to use eggs for your cake or eggs for, you use eggs to cook with, and it's true. You know, I moved from Arizona, and they've cut the water supply for lettuce and tomatoes that are going to come out in February and March when Chicago, New York, and all the big cities don't have fresh vegetables. I mean, how expensive is a tomato going to be in the middle of February? That's going to be a scary thing for people.
And yes, and I don't see it slowing down. So, and as an example to your point, I make a decent living. Um, but embarrassingly, when I get that check, it's almost spent. And
Yes.
it's not and I don't live like I okay, here's an example. Some people will think, well, John, if you're making such a good living, why are you struggling, right? Well, I live in Seattle, like every other major city, it's expensive, but I haven't taken a vacation literally ever. My first vacation I wanted to take, I literally scheduled a week off. Unfortunately, I got COVID. So it's like,
Oh,
awesome,
timing's
awesome.
horrible.
Yeah, but but the point in me saying this is that I don't live an extravagant lifestyle. My kids all played sports up and through college, so that was expensive for me to kind of fund that, but it wasn't anything super extravagant. And it just makes me think, man, that at least here in the States, right? That middle class, I I I don't know how they're going to make it. Like next week is Thanksgiving, most expensive Thanksgiving
Exactly.
of, in the history of the US, right? And then, now we got a diesel shortage, which means that Christmas, gifts are going to be more expensive. So, and then when people get their credit card bills, that first quarter of next year, um, I don't know. I just think things are going to really, really, really hit home if it hasn't already. So I know I'm probably rambling a little bit, but I
But you're
just,
you're you're making sense. Don't worry about rambling. But you know, with your experience and everything from blockchain to working with setting up your own system and everything, you've got the experience. You know how to teach people. This is amazing because I do think people don't know exactly what they're doing. I mean, I my crypto instructor tells the story that he got involved with crypto way early, 600 $700 level, and when he sold it, he bought a house in New Jersey with a pool. They
yeah,
bought it in June. His kids at the time were 7 and 5. They loved swimming in the pool, and then he had to sell the house for capital gains, and he's just like, why isn't the
yeah.
middle class taught how to do things correctly? I mean, that's a scary thing where when people start making money, they know it before you go into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you asked me a question about how much money could people make, and this is relevant to what you just mentioned. Is I ran through a scenario because in my setup, it's got a um, kind of I guess a calculator based off of your position size and how long you're in a trade, et cetera, et cetera.
Excellent.
But what's cool about it, well, here's an example is that if somebody was, this is a real life example. Well, first of all, let me tell you about this person real quick. She was in customer service. She worked at a vitamin company, and she was on the front lines answering phones.
Okay.
And she was a personal trainer. And her career got decimated because of COVID, so she had to change careers. And she is making around 22 or $23 an hour, 40 hours a week. So the scenario that I'm going to share is that if she was trading with $10,000 in a given month, right, on average, that $10,000 on the low side, she could be making 14,000 on the low side, and on the high. And this is, by the way, during Bitcoin's largest, longest bear market.
Correct.
Like I think the second longest and largest bear market of all times when we were running these numbers. So on the low side, 14,000, and I think on the mid case size, it was right around 17 or 19,000. So good news is it's much more than what she was making, right?
Correct.
The bad news is the taxes,
Correct.
right? So she now she's not ready yet for the trust conversation,
But
you know.
she's going there. I mean,
Yep,
yes, you don't take this wrong, John. You think your course being $10,000, you think that's expensive, but you're showing her how to make so much more money. She's getting her initial investment back within the first year. She does it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's just going to keep multiplying on itself.
yep,
That's the compounded interest rate is the eighth wonder of the world, as Albert
yep.
Einstein says. So
Yeah, yeah. So it's so interesting, Sal. I'm so grateful I met you because I'm so fortunate that I dug in for over those 12,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell wrote in his book, to be, I think he said, an expert or something. You got to do something for 12,000 hours. So I agree with that, right? So I'm so grateful. But then I knew there was a better way to, again, protect ourselves, if that's a okay word to use. Um, and again, I read a book years ago by Robert Kiyosaki, and they don't make this book anymore, but I'll never forget it. But it was this big green book. It was big, like a 11-inch by 18-inch
what was the name of the
paperback.
book? I don't know this
Oh,
book.
actually, I'm looking at my library. I don't have it. I can't find it, and you can't get it today. But it was called Inc. INC and Grow Rich, and I can't find it these days. But all I remember out of the book was it's legal to bring your taxes down to single digits.
People don't realize this, but if you are go to tax, if you read the tax code, front page says it is up to you to alleviate your own taxes. I mean,
Yeah.
the IRS is telling us alleviate our own taxes. So exactly. So
And so before I met you, I was calling trust attorneys, but I didn't know the right words. I probably sounded like a wannabe criminal because I didn't know the right words. But they were all of these, these attorneys that I was chatting with were, around family trusts and wills and how to avoid probate, which is great.
correct,
But that's not a good use case for me, thank
correct.
goodness, yet, right?
Just to let you know, John, 95% of the trusts out there are my parents had it, the Gimon Family Trust to avoid probate. I'm closing my dad's trust when I do the 2022 taxes. I mean, under IRS rules, I have to close that trust down because he's passed away. My mom's passed away. All their belongings have to be divided between my brothers and I. And you know, that's I hate to say it. That's what most people know. I
Mm,
mean, I'm glad you didn't stop. You kept going down the rabbit hole to find out more information. That's so important.
yeah, yeah. And I just thought of this, Sally, and I hope this is not out of bounds. But just as a thank you to you, and a thank you for anybody that wants to watch this and they've come this far in your video once you post this. Um, if anybody is interested in my setup, just have them reach out to me, and I will, and I mean this, for the first 10 people, 90% off.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
generous.
Yeah. And that'll also come with my time. Like they'll
Okay,
get a couple
excellent,
hours of my time. And
excellent.
seriously,
And we'll have your when we do post this, we'll have your links, we'll have everything there. But John, that is a very nice offer. So thank you for offering that.
yeah, because hopefully you and I will have some evangelists out there eventually. Or at least for me, I know you do because I've got your tattoo,
I hope you
right?
did. I don't have a tattoo because I can't decide what I want just yet. So
That's so funny. I don't have any either because I
yes.
think my ADD, I'd get tired of whatever I got.
For me, I had a platelet match for 7 years. So I couldn't get a tattoo. It was really popular, and then I keep changing my mind, so I haven't done one yet. So, but yes,
That's awesome.
one what would you say to anybody listening to this podcast? What is the one takeaway or call to action you would ask them to do?
Yeah. Well, I'd say there's two things.
Okay.
Selfishly for me, if you're interested, I really mean what I said. I may even, gosh, I may even give you 95% off. I just want people, these are tough times, period. unless you're really fortunate, right? There's more unfortunate than fortunate.
Yes.
So that offer stands. I would love it for people just to have a little more peace of mind. And then I would say the second thing is that just because we don't hear about trust doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Just because it's not on mainstream media and we hear about it, via this podcast, this video, this Zoom session, these really are amazing. And they really do hold up in court if, keyword is if, not when, but if it does go that far. And the other thing is you don't have to overcomplicate these.
Correct.
You don't have to be an attorney to understand. It's crazy how simple these can be. So my advice would be is these are real. And I can't say I would, for people to do it, but what I would say is at least do your homework.
Yes.
At least spend 4, 5, 6 hours. And at the end of that, if you feel like it's not a good fit, awesome. But if it is,
I appreciate that, John. Thank you so much for your time on this podcast. My big takeaway is do something. You're offering an amazing product. Just have the listeners do something with your product. Learn how to. You've got more. You've given more information in a half an hour than I think I have learned in the past 6 months in my crypto class. So thank you for sharing all that with me.
yeah.
I just would like to say thank you for being on the podcast. Again, this is Stop Paying Capital Gains Now. If you have any questions, we'll have all of John's information when we release this. Thank you for being here. I hope you. Where's the first place, or when you get into your van, what do you want to see? What's the first thing you want to see?
I can't wait until I'm in a classroom full of people that just want to be there. I can't wait.
That'd be excellent.
Thank you for listening to Stop Paying Capital Gains Now. You can find out more about this at thetrustisyou.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get this and every other episode that comes out. We have lots of great stuff coming up, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Thank you in advance for all the reviews and comments. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to serving you next week's episode. Take care and have a beautiful week.